and welcome to today's lecture, and today's topic is dynamics of adjustment and coping strategies. And the objectives set for the lecture are to know about the term adjustment and its importance, to get familiar with the nature and process of adjustment, to get acquainted with different dimensions of adjustment in school, to know the process of adjustment mechanism, to get familiar with different coping strategies and its importance, to know the role of classroom teachers in pupils' adjustment, to know the importance of teachers' self-adjustment. Now, introduction. Adjustment refers to a process wherein one builds variations in the behavior to achieve harmony with oneself, others, or the environment, with an aim to maintain the state of equilibrium between the individual and the environment. Adjustment is a behavioral process by which a person maintains balance among various needs that one encounters at a given point of time. Each and every situation of life demands that the person concerned should be able to effectively perform in accordance with some guiding principles and should be able to strike a balance among various forces. Every individual has different types of needs and goals which he always attempts to attain, but due to some external or internal factors, it is not possible for him to achieve these goals at all the time. In such cases, sometimes people may suffer from frustration. In such a situation, an individual may react in different ways. He may attack physically the source of frustration to reduce his mental tension, or he may destroy the object of frustration. He may use different mechanisms to beat his frustration and adjust himself to protect his ego. Thus, adjustment mechanism is a device used to achieve an indirect satisfaction of a need in order to reduce his or her tension. This mechanism is used by different individuals in their own ways. The types and frequency of the mechanism differ from individual to individual. Now, let us have a look over the concept and the importance of adjustment. All of our behavior, conscious or unconscious, voluntary or automatic, planned or unplanned, wise or foolish, represents our attempts to meet our needs. Throughout life, our physiological and psychological needs are continually being aroused, and we engage in behavior that reduces or satisfies the needs. This constant cycle of needs arousal and their satisfaction in a broad sense is the process of adjustment. For instance, apart from meeting our physiological needs like dressing warmly when cold, eating food when hungry, and coping adequately with psychological demands like appearing for a job interview, preparing for an exam, bereavement, transfer of residence, etc. If we observe the behavior of an individual from morning till night, we will find that most of his behavior represents attempts to fulfill his needs, which may be physical, psychological, or social in nature. When an individual's current needs are satisfied, they are replaced by another set of needs. In this way, the process of needs arousal continues throughout the life cycle of an individual. Adjustment may also be defined as a continuous process in which a person varies his behavior to produce a more harmonious relationship between himself and his environment. Alternatively, it can be conceptualized as a state of equilibrium between the individual and his environment. It may also be understood as psychological survival in much the same way as biologists use the term adaptation to describe physiological survival. According to James C. Coleman, adjustment is the outcome of individuals' attempts to deal with stress and meet his needs, also his efforts to maintain harmonious relationship with the environment. A.S. Gates and A.T. Jerslid observed, adjustment is a continual process by which a person varies his behavior to produce a more harmonious relationship between himself and his environment. L.S. Schaffer said, adjustment is the process by which living organism maintains a balance between his needs and the circumstances that influence the satisfaction of these needs. According to H. C. Smith, a good adjustment is one which is both realistic and satisfying. At least in the long run, it reduces to minimum the frustration, the tensions and anxieties which a person must endure. Traxler observed, occasionally in the use of the term adjustment, we imply that the most desirable state of adjustment is the one in which the individual is perfectly happy and satisfied with all aspects of his life, and the one in which he has reached the level in all his contacts with his environment that he would be glad to see persist through his life. Thus, these definitions leads to some characteristics of adjustment, which are: adjustment helps us to keep balance between our needs and capacity to meet these needs. Adjustment implies change in our thinking and in way of life to the demands of situation. Adjustment gives us the ability and strength to bring desirable change in the state of our environment. Adjustment is physiological as well as psychological. Adjustment is multidimensional, and adjustment brings us happiness and contentment. Now, what is a well-adjusted person? Adjusted individual seems to be one who has established some reasonable goals in line with his interests and abilities, and who has settled down to work towards those goals seriously and steadily, but without any tension. Now, what are the characteristics of a well-adjusted person? A well-adjusted person is expected to possess some characteristics, which are: adequate philosophy of life, awareness of one's assets and limitations, balanced level of aspiration, that is, neither too high nor too low, satisfaction of basic needs, rational and appreciative attitude, flexible behavior, strong will to face challenges, realistic perception of life, respect for self and others, warm and contented feelings with the environment. Now, let us have a look over the multidimensional nature of adjustment. The concept of adjustment was originally biological and was concerned with adaptation to physical environment for survival. Adaptation to physical environment is, of course, a person's important concern, but he has to also adjust to social pressures and demands of socialization that are inherent in living independently with others. The demands from a person's internal nature, his physiological needs like hunger, sleep, illumination, etc., psychological needs like self-esteem and self-actualization influence the psychological functioning and adjustment of a person. Now, why the process of adjustment is complicated? The process of adjustment is complicated because a person's interaction with one demand may come in conflict with the requirement of another. Conflict can arise either because two internal needs are in opposition, or because two external demands are with each other, or because an internal need opposes an external demand. Conflict represents a special problem of adjustment. Satisfaction of one need as opposed to the other needs may not provide full satisfaction. On the other hand, failure to gratify a strong need or to respond to a strong external demand may result in painful tensions. These tensions can disturb psychological comfort, produce physical symptoms, or result in abnormal behavior. Adjustment as an achievement and as a process. Adjustment may be viewed from two angles. From one angle, adjustment may be viewed as an achievement or how well a person handles his conflicts or overcomes his resulting tension. From another angle, adjustment may be looked upon as a process or how a person adjusts to his conflicts. In the first case, we ask whether a person's adjustment is adequate and efficient. In the second case, we ask how does he adjust and what are the modes of adjustment to various demands. Adjustment as a psychological process. Adjustment as process of major interest is to the psychologists who want to understand a person and his behavior. The way one tries to adjust himself to his external environment at any point of time depends upon the interaction between the biological factors in growth and his social experiences. In general, there are three broad types of adjustment process in the event of conflict between a person's internal needs and environmental demands. The person may modify or inhibit the internal impulse. The person may try to alter the environmental demand in some manner so that he resolves the conflict. The person may escape through unconscious resources to mental mechanism like fantasy, compensation, projection, rationalization, sublimation, etc. Now, areas of balanced adjustment. Good physical health. Emotionally balanced, free from conflicts and frustrations. Work efficiency or full use of one's occupational skills. Socially acceptable behavior such as obtaining sexual satisfaction through marriage. School adjustment. Now, what is the maladjustment in school? Maladjustment means a degree of disharmony between the individual and the environment. Maladjustment always results from frustration caused by the non-satisfaction of the needs. When we are able to provide situation in the school which enable the child to satisfy his needs, maladjustment takes place. In the words of Herbert Sorensen, a person is not in harmony with the work if it is too hard or too easy. If it is too hard or if the student has too little capacity, excessive failure is experienced. If it is too easy, that the student has high ability of his work, the work is dull and drudging. Now, let us discuss some dimensions of adjustment in school, which are: first, adjustment to academic, co-curricular and school routine. Psychological adjustment, adjustment to and within the self, and social adjustment. Now, first, adjustment to academic, co-curricular and school routine. Getting most out of specific studies and activities. Overcoming learning problems in instructional difficulties. Satisfactory progress in exploratory experiences. Optimum relationship between classroom and objectives and individual outcome. Choice of appropriate course in accordance with 3 A's: age, ability and attitude. Second is psychological adjustment. It is development of a good memory, development of desirable interests, development of good temperament, development of desirable attitudes. Now, adjustment to and within the self. Self-understanding and acceptance. Proper insight into needs, attitudes and values. Overcoming emotional difficulties. Maintenance of health and personal hygiene. Now, social adjustment. Harmonious relationship with pupils and teachers. Getting along with the members of opposite sex. Feeling socially acceptable. Proper understanding of social needs and requirements. Understanding group goals. Meeting effectively social requirements of the home, peer groups, culture and the community. Now, let's have a look over the adjustment process or mechanism. Adjustment mechanism is a method or means used by the individual to achieve satisfaction of his needs indirectly. This helps in reducing tensions and assists him to maintain self-respect. Such mechanisms are desirable and very helpful in dealing with frustrations. Carried to extremes, they lead to behavioral disorders. There are some mechanisms which can be discussed as: first, compensation. Compensation is a concept where the individual attempts to cover up his weakness in one area by exhibiting strength in another. A student deficient in physical activities may compensate himself in showing good results in academic field and vice versa. Next is identification. Identification is a concept where an individual attempts to identify himself with some successful person. To hide his own failures, a student may identify himself with his father and talk about his success. Next is rationalization. Rationalization means shifting of responsibility of failures to outside factors. That is, many students attribute their failure to the difficult question paper. Next is projection. This is a tendency to push out another person one's own unrealized, frustrated ambitions or attribute to another one's own faults. For example, school learners are often the victims of their parents' projection of their former hopes for higher education or higher social status. Next is daydreaming. Imaginative fulfillment of needs is called daydreaming. It provides mental relief to an individual if it is done within limits. Carried to extremes, it becomes harmful. Now, what are the different adjustment programs in the school? Number 1, achievement testing, interpretation and follow-up. Number 2, diagnostic testing, interpretation and follow-up. Third one is identification and analysis of adjustment process. Next is providing suitable educational and experiences in accord with individual needs and capacities. Use of variety of instructional methods, individual and group remedial work. Next, evaluation and coordination of classroom reports, anecdotal records, etc. Students' participation in school management. Individual interviewing and counseling. Next is organization of a rich co-curricular program. Communication of rich educational and occupational information. Parents' cooperation and education. School community coordination. Now, what is coping and adjustment? Coping refers to the human behavioral process for dealing with demands, both internal and external, in situations that are perceived as threats. It also refers to cognitive and behavioral strategies that people use to deal with stressful situations or difficult demands, whether they are internal or external. It means to invest one's conscious effort to solve personal and interpersonal problems. in order to try to master, minimize or tolerate stress and conflict. The psychological coping mechanisms are commonly termed as coping skills. Coping mechanisms are used to manage or deal with stress, while defense mechanisms are generally unconscious processes that people are unaware they are using. For example, projection is a defense mechanism that involves seeing unsavory aspects of oneself in others. The capacity to tolerate or cope with stress varies among people. The root of stress is the cognitive appraisal of an event or as stressful or stress including. Primary appraisal is the extent to which a person perceives an event as benign or threatening and harmful. Secondary appraisal is the estimation of whether a person has the resources or abilities necessary to deal with what has already been deemed stressful. An individual can effectively cope with stressors by appraising stressful situation and having confidence in their ability to handle situations that are stressful. Generally, there are two coping strategies based on different areas of focus. Number one, problem-focused strategy. Those using a problem-focused coping strategy focus on the problem itself, attempting to tackle the root cause of distress. Examples include analyzing the situation, working harder, applying what they have already learned in their daily life, and talking to someone that has a direct impact on the situation. Next is emotion-focused strategy. Those using an emotion-focused coping strategy focus their energy on dealing with their feelings rather than the problem itself. In this case, they may use mechanisms like brooding, imagining or magical thinking, avoiding or denying, blaming or seeking social support. It is simply ignoring the problem, but this strategy is an important one. It does not change the situation or influence the problem, but focuses on what can be controlled. Besides these two strategies, there are different types of coping mechanisms, which are: first, adaptive mechanism. Mechanisms in these group are positive mechanisms that help people effectively deal with stress. Second, attack mechanisms. These mechanisms attempt to displace the stress or discomfort a person in feeling onto another person or people. Next is avoidance mechanism. As the name implies, these mechanisms involve avoiding the issues that are causing stress. Next, behavioral mechanism. Behavioral coping mechanisms are attempts to change what the person does in order to more effectively deal with their stress. Next is cognitive mechanism. Unlike behavioral mechanism, cognitive mechanism involve a person trying to change the way he or she thinks in order to deal with stress. Next, conversion mechanisms. These coping mechanisms are attempts to change or transform the problem into something else. For example, focusing on the positive to make it a positive situation instead of a stressful one. Defense mechanism. These refer to the original set of defense mechanisms outlined by Freud. Some of these mechanisms are generally agreed to be accurate descriptions of the mechanisms people use, while others have little evidence to support them. Next is self-harm mechanisms. These are the least effective of coping mechanisms, as they result in harm to ourselves. Thus, coping strategies are the tools used to manage tough emotions and cope with stress. It is often expected behavior to know how to handle emotions, but it is not a skill we are born with. This is why coping strategies need to be taught and practiced on the regular basis. Coping strategies can make a big difference in helping students to be successful in and outside of school. These strategies are life skills that we all need, so it is important to help students develop them at an early age. Now, benefits of coping strategies. Teaching coping strategies is important. These are one of the most foundational social emotional skills that all students need to learn. The benefits that teaching coping strategies can bring is that it teaches emotional management. It encourages a positive way to express emotions. It empowers kids and teens to make better choices. It improves self-regulation and self-control. It creates feelings of happiness and calm. It serves as a tool to manage stress. It also improves confidence and independence. It helps learners work through risks and challenges. It improves behaviors and choices overall. Now, what is the role of the classroom teacher in pupils' adjustment? The classroom teacher plays the most strategic role in influencing the environment to bring about an improved adjustment of pupils. Raymond and Hatch and Buford Steffler describe the role of classroom teacher in providing a healthy classroom environment that would complement the adjustment process of each pupil as. It provides a classroom environment that permits young people to feel free to express themselves and to put forth their best efforts as individuals and as members of groups. Develops a youngster's self-respect and self-esteem by complimenting for the work well done by a smile or a word of recognition. Has an appreciation that deviation from acceptable behavior is caused due to factors that stem from the school, home, and his community. Recognizes that a student who causes no trouble may be experiencing serious emotional conflicts. Recognizes that persistent behavior cases may be sent to specialists for diagnosis and treatment. Accepts that every pupil is different, and because he is different, he will achieve in accordance with his needs. Develops cumulative records by collecting sociometric records, autobiographies, and similar information through classroom setting. Practices good mental health. Practices and contributes to the effectiveness of case conferences. Now, teacher's self-adjustment. The integrative behavior of the teacher should be satisfying to him as well as to his students, and it tends to bring about integrative behavior in the children. The democratic and receptive behavior of the teacher leads to better emotional rapport in the class and develops positive attitudes in students towards the teacher and the classwork. The dominative behavior of the teacher creates a resistance in the children. A well-adjusted teacher is capable of showing mature attitude towards pupils' immature behavior. In this context, Freud observed, "I hold that teachers should have learned to know and control conflicts before his educational work." Now, dear students, let us conclude. Students during childhood and adolescence are an important period in the development of coping mechanism for stress and to make adjustments. The ability to cope with stress is considered a central feature of human development. Naturally, all humans are confronted with threatening and challenging events in their daily life that need for action and readjustment. Adolescents might face problems in coping with stress and they need new educational programs in schools to learn how to cope with stress. Most students face different problems, challenges, obstacles, and situations that can produce or increase stress. The different level of stress and or poor management of stress may affect the academic performance and achievements of students. Managing and coping with these stressors are the cornerstones to pass any transitional period. Identifying how students cope with stress in their daily life is a crucial issue, and maladaptive and poor management will inversely affect students' future. With this, we come to an end of this lecture. Hope you understood well. Thank you.